Hello and welcome to the Being an Engineer podcast. Today we're joined by Ryan Stevenson, a freelance mechanical engineer and organizer of the Boise Hardware Meetup. With experience ranging from product design at Apple to outdoor gear innovation at Cascade Designs and Werder Paddles, Ryan has worked across industries from consumer electronics to composites and even locomotives. He now helps companies of all sizes bring hardware products from concept to commercialization while fostering community among engineers in Boise. Ryan, thanks so much for being with us on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, so I have to ask you, given that you have some experience with locomotives, apparently, do people ever confuse the kind of engineer that you are?
No, but you would think they would these days. I'm not sure the vernacular for engineer is still as popular with locomotives these days. I
Yeah.
think most people associate engineer with college-educated people that build products or code or something like that these days. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
not
think
yet.
these days
That'd be
that's
fun though.
probably the case. Yeah. The previous generation, maybe. I know a couple of times earlier on in my career, I had that question, and it was serious. I thought they were joking at first. I was like, come on, man. Anyway, all right. So the first serious question for Ryan, what made you decide to become an engineer?
Yeah, I knew this question was coming actually, and I had to think long and hard about it. I feel like a lot of people on your podcast grew up playing with Legos and building things and connectorizing things and all that stuff. That's not really what I did as a kid. I played a lot of video games. I rode my bike around, being a little hoodlum. It wasn't until really I went, I got out of high school. I was planning to go to community college. My dad at the time was asking what I wanted to do, and I didn't know. So I said something along the lines of, just go for business. I don't know, why not? It seems like a reasonable option. And I had always done really well in math and like physics type classes. So he basically said to me, "You're pretty smart. Why don't you just try something harder?" Basically, no offense to physics majors out there, but so I mean that's what I did. I was like, all right. I was kind of jokingly said I'll be a rocket scientist or something. That's what I'd originally intended to do was aerospace engineering, but went into biomedical engineering because Tennessee at the time had a program that allowed you to get in-state tuition. Whole story behind that, but yeah, that's the short version. Just kind of on a whim, honestly.
Nice. So you went through college, and then was Apple the first company where you worked, or was that a little bit down the road?
No, that was far down the road. That was the last company I worked for, technically.
Okay.
In so I went to grad school at Boise State after undergrad in Tennessee. Reasoning being I really liked kayaking and mountain biking, and going to grad school allowed me to keep doing more of that while getting more of education, which I valued. So I did that. I actually had a startup of my own in grad school. A buddy of mine named Micah Johnson, we were in the same classes, and he had this idea for a ski pole with sensors in it that would send the stratigraphy of the layers of the snowpack to your phone, essentially. And if you don't know what that means, basically layers of the snowpack. It's for assessing safety in the backcountry. So I was doing that in grad school, and then as soon as I got out, I got a job with a company called SGW Design Works as a contractor at a locomotive manufacturer here in Boise, who's no longer here anymore. So I was kind of doing both at the same time. I was doing the locomotive job and the startup at the same time right after grad school.
All right. Well, tell me a little bit about the locomotive job because I don't know that I've ever talked with an engineer who worked on locomotives.
Yeah, it's neither have I guess, since now I think about it, other than myself and the coworkers I had formerly. But yeah, locomotives are really fascinating in that they are made here in a town like Boise. You wouldn't think it, but such heavy mechanical equipment has to be made somewhere, right? And it doesn't make sense to ship it on a container. So yeah, they're made here in the United States. It's a lot of weldments, a lot of sheet metal, a lot of grease, big, huge engines powering the thing, castings. Yeah, think of the largest machine you can think of, and that's like a locomotive. You know, you're getting in there, getting dirty, all kinds of stuff like that. So
Yeah. So it seems like there's like this polar opposite contrast between developing a locomotive and then something like the Vision Pro that you worked on at Apple, right? The locomotive, big, greasy, not super precise, I would imagine. and then the Vision Pro, like ultra precise, intense, probably cutting edge manufacturing processes going on. Is that an accurate statement, or am I off there at all?
No, that's extremely accurate. I mean, when you think of like if you were to look at the tolerance block on a locomotive for any part versus something that's going in the Vision Pro, yeah, you could not be further apart as far as tolerances go. I think the first decimal point, I think most tolerances on the locomotive are like tenth of an inch or something crazy. It's like, you're
Okay.
never even going to hit that, like close to that on something going in the Apple Pro. So yeah,
Yeah.
way, way different. Not only from like a culture standpoint, what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, but also just from the product itself, as far as manufacturing techniques. I can't think of any giant weldments in the Vision Pro off the top of my head. It's just not something that's used. It's very different
Yeah.
manufacturing processes.
How did the experience contrast for you? I mean, working on such polar opposite products and processes, was there one that you preferred greatly over the other, or were both like super fun in their own way?
Yeah, they were just very different. For obvious like the obvious reasons I just explained, and then they were just at very different points in my life as well. Like the locomotive job was the first thing I did basically right out of grad school, so that was just a very big learning experience, just trying to get my feet under me, understand manufacturing processes. It was helpful in that I could go see what was going on and talk to people that were actually doing the welding and putting these things together and figure out why I can make something a certain way. Kind of like a boot camp or DFM, if you will, for that particular process. Whereas at Apple, um, much older, I was like, when was that, 22? So like 7 years after the locomotive job, just vastly different culture. Like there's dudes smoking cigarettes and all kinds of things on the job at the locomotive place or whatever. It's you're not gonna find that at like a tech firm. It's just very different culture. You're using CMs over in Asia, vastly different communication styles and things you're looking for. So yeah, I mean, I can't really think of anything that could be further apart, I guess, in a way, is like locomotives versus something like the Vision Pro.
Yeah.
Did I answer your question?
Well, let's talk. I want to talk a little bit more about the Vision Pro. I mean, that's one of the more interesting products out there on the market, I think. Full disclosure, I've never used one, but they look incredible, and probably there are some quirks right now, like limited applications for it, but hopefully it keeps growing over the years and it becomes, mainstream at some point. What was your, to the extent that you can say, of course, I'm sure some of this is still confidential, but in what uh, how were you involved with the development of the Vision Pro? And if you can speak to it, what were one or two of the most challenging aspects of that development?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges was really just being when I came to Apple, the Vision Pro was fairly late in the development. They're really trying to push to get this thing to market, and there was just still a large amount of things that need to be done, frankly. So I think just being plopped into that atmosphere of we have stuff to do now really fast. It's just an intense environment. And you're just trying to hammer and get stuff done as fast as possible. A lot of learning. I mean, Apple has its own ecosystem that you're trying to get assimilated into with all the various tools and the people. You're meeting all these new people. So that was just a real challenge. What is incredibly impressive, though, is just the amount of data that goes into the design. Like, this, especially with the Vision Pro, you have this area of your face um, that's being contacted by the Light Seal, which is one aspect of the Vision Pro that I worked on. This part of your face is incredibly diverse across the entire population, and to have all that data point assimilated into, I think they got down to like 7 SKUs. It takes in a ton of analysis and data and just engineering to figure out how you're going to bring something like that to market, and also make it safe. Part of the thing that I worked on at Apple was sort of more of the structural components in the Light Seal. I didn't do FEA on it. They have a whole team dedicated to that, but it's certainly part of the design process. Tiny parts, because when you fall on your face, you don't want like the optics to crash into your eyeballs, and that's a real risk. So that's something you
Mm.
have to worry about. Yeah, it's just an incredible piece of engineering all around. So to answer your question, I worked on the Light Seal, some of the Light Seal components with a team of people, and then one of the other projects I worked on was sort of the cover design, like the inbox cover that the Vision Pro comes with. The one that's in the box right now is like this really slick soft goods part that it's like sock basically. It goes over the lens. I didn't develop that one, but we were on like a parallel path with that one.
Nice. Do you remember the first time you put the Vision Pro on when it was, more or less functional? And what was that like experiencing this pretty groundbreaking product for the first time?
It's just a, it's, I was never really a VR person. So there's like other headsets like Quest and things like that. I never really played with those. So when I put on the Vision Pro and it was still in like a beta version, it's just a completely different experience versus a traditional computer. Like I'm staring at you through a screen. It's all 2D essentially. That's not what the Vision Pro is. Like you're putting it on, you're seeing these photos and things in 3-dimensional. You kind of have to wrap your head around it a little bit and how to control it. You're just using your hands. So it's just, I don't say mind-boggling. That might be a bit hyperbolic, but it's just a very unique experience to like wrap your head around how that kind of technology works essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, of course, no one can predict the future, but if you were to look into your own crystal ball, do you think the future is built around that type of technology, where XR type technology, you're looking into some kind of glasses or goggles, and everything's 3D around you, and hand gestures to control things, or do you think we still have a long ways to go with our somewhat archaic computer systems?
Gosh, that's a good question. I think it's going to depend on the next generation. By that I mean like my kids or like even the Gen Z, what they want to do. Because I like using a computer. I'm pretty set in my ways. I think there's some really cool technology. Like Microsoft has their HoloLens for use on like manufacturing floors. You can see the drawings in real time. I think that's a really cool application of VR technology. So I know that's hard to say. Most likely it will go towards more VR, more 3D spatial type things. I don't have a crystal ball, of course, but I can definitely see that being the evolution. I mean, I just feel like computers are so good now, like laptops. I mean, how much better can you get those really? I mean, I feel like the innovation pipeline, if you will, has to go that way. I mean, it just makes sense to me.
Yeah. Um, let's change gears a little bit and talk about what you're doing for work now. What was that transition like? You're freelancing right now. You're taking on jobs under your own umbrella. How did that come about?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I had left to move back to Boise with my family at the time. My wife got residency here in Boise, so wasn't an option for me to work remotely for Apple here in Boise. So I decided to take some time off. I took a year off, essentially. I can't remember the exact months, but tried some other things. Tried like day trading, for instance. So there are various ways to make money. But I mostly just hung out with my daughter and just had fun. Took a year off. And the freelancing thing came about because I had a buddy of mine who used to work with at Cascade. He reached out and said, "Are you looking for work?" Basically. And at the time, I wasn't working. I was like, sure, why not? Yeah. So I kind of put the bug in my ear, and that was just like a little thing. Just like, why can't I keep doing this? Essentially, keep trying to do this indefinitely. So that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to make a go of it now. Being freelance for myself.
That's awesome. Congratulations. I'm hearing some parallels between your story and mine. I mean, some, not all, for sure. But there was a period in my life when I uh, I just wanted to try something different, and so I had a photography company with a buddy of mine. I did like web design for a little while. I was looking at commercial real estate, just completely different things. I never really left engineering. I did all these things kind of as side hustles. Ultimately, came back to just continued with engineering. So how long have you been freelancing at this point?
Gosh, let me think here. So I did a little bit back in April of, I guess if I counted everything, probably about 16 months, but really I've been focusing hard on it like the last year. So I'll just say about a year or so.
Okay. What have been a few of the most rewarding and the most challenging aspects of doing your own thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of like a double-edged sword. So the most rewarding part is I get to set my own schedule. I don't have to fill out a PTO form, anything like that. I just work when I work, and I try to provide value for my clients. The flip side is that I don't have any consistent income whatsoever. So I'm not getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, which that's the trade-off, right? You're trading your time for money. So if you don't have work coming in, you're not actively trying to get work, you're not getting paid. So I think from a accounting standpoint, that's probably the most challenging part. I really just like working. Freelancing tends to focus on small to medium-sized businesses. I just like those kind of clients personally too. I have nothing against larger clients, but I just feel like they're sort of underrepresented in a lot of respects, especially with engineering. They come in without a real large depth of knowledge, so to speak, about the various processes of how to make a product. And that's kind of fun to educate people on those things.
Yeah. We have a connection through the hardware meetup. You started the Boise chapter, and I started the Phoenix chapter. Tell us a little bit about the hardware meetup.
Yeah, that came about because I had reached out to a former coworker of mine at Pensar named Rob Leonard, asking him if he basically had any work. I mean, and he said, I don't, but there's this group called Informal, which you've interviewed Sam Holland already. So he told me to connect with them and name drop him, which I did. So I got to talking with Sam and Nate runs the hardware meetup collective, if you will. So I got to talking with Nate, and essentially the conversation led to Boise doesn't have a hardware meetup. Why not? Why don't I just go for it? Just why not? I mean, what do I have to lose? It's sort of like my mindset for a lot of things, but why not try and see if there's any traction here? And Boise's not a small city by any stretch, but it doesn't have, say, the product design traction that a lot of other cities do. So I think there was a bit of hesitation from some of the people I had talked to about the whole idea, but it's been going really well. And there's just people out there wanting to nerd out on hardware and connect and learn cool things. So that's been a real pleasant surprise with the Boise Hardware Meetup so far.
That's cool. How long have you been doing it?
Since last November. So we just did our third one at SGW. When was that? That was end of September we did that. So yeah, we just finished our third hardware meetup. So about a year. It'll be about a year here coming up soon, quarter four, things like that.
Terrific. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Let's go back to your freelance work here just for a bit. What's a typical project like for you? I'm guessing there probably is no typical project, but what's a day in the life like for Ryan Stevenson these days?
Yeah, typical project. And as you noted, it's kind of varied. Mostly it's been consumer electronics. That seems to be a thing lately. People need help with is consumer electronics. I had a guy come to me about wanting to make a charger for a Apple mouse, for instance. Things I get through Informal are mostly consumer electronics. Could be a toy, for instance. One client I'm working with, I'm helping him make a temperature gun with some advanced sensors in there for super accurate temperature measurement. So that seems to be the hot thing these days, is in the hardware realm at least, is consumer electronics. I don't get a lot of like machine design type projects or anything of that nature. It's mostly consumer electronics. I'm trying to think of who else had been. Yeah, there's a guy who came to me for like a drone product, which is basically a consumer electronic in some respects. So yeah, that seems to be the hot thing these days.
Nice.
Hardware seems to be having a renaissance, which is kind of cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. What do you like working on the most? I mean, how much of a background do you have in electronics? Is that something you picked up along the way? Is it what you want your focus to be?
Yeah, I like it. I think the cool thing about consumer electronics, and I really dove hard into this when I started working for Pensar. I'd sort of done the outdoor industry for several years prior to that. It's just a very innovative segment of engineering. There's just so many ideas, like crazy things. Like there's like that things I wouldn't even think of that people are trying to do with consumer electronics. Things like a thrown toilet, like a toilet camera, where it's gonna inspect your fecal matter and give you feedback on that. Like I would have never thought of that, but people are doing it, right? I mean, it's crazy to me.
Oh wow,
Yeah,
that's wild.
that's an Informal product. I'm not working on it, but they're it's just like crazy stuff like that. I just love like the wacky stuff that people come up with in the hardware realm. It's just such an eclectic group of people. And I just enjoy working on it. There's a lot of technicality to it, like trying to package these circuit boards and things and trying to execute a vision of either an industrial designer or the founder itself. It's just a fun process to try and execute on that. And it's always challenging. It's hard bringing a physical product to the market. So I enjoy that challenge as well.
What do you consider your bread and butter? Is it industrial design, just hardcore mechanical engineering, electronics design, or kind of a mix of everything?
Yeah, I'm more of a generalist, but if I had to like pick one niche, I'm not an industrial designer, but I like to take industrial designs or even make them myself with no disrespect to industrial designers. So I'm trying not to broach into that field, but like I like doing a lot of hardcore surfacing and getting complex surfaces and industrial designs and trying to package electronics in that. So I think bridging that gap between industrial design and getting an actual product out into the field is kind of my specialty, if you will, whether that be from prototype side, and then eventually having different segments where you kind of scale up to commercialization. And I think it's challenging to do because you get kind of sometimes you get this thing where the industrial designer makes something and I just throw it over the fence. I think that's the term they use. And that could be a real challenge because it's not designed for manufacturing. So I have to go back and say like, hey, either fix these surfaces or I go rebuild it and make it manufacturable for the specific manufacturing method. So it's a fun challenge for sure.
And what CAD system are you using?
I'm currently using SolidWorks.
Okay. All right. So I came across something, I don't know, it was a post or something where you called yourself a curvature comb enthusiast.
Yes.
Now, this is really getting into the weeds a bit, but let's dive in.
Yeah.
What is the curvature comb? I mean, this is a good segue talking about industrial design and surfacing, but tell us a little bit about why the curvature comb enthusiast.
Yeah. So let's go back to what a curvature comb is. A curvature comb is essentially the this could be either for a spline or a curve or a surface itself, but curvature cone is essentially like a measure of the curvature of the surface, basically. So it's non-scalar, like you can change the scale of it. If you go to that curvature comb tool in SolidWorks, you click on a surface, you'll see a bunch of things sticking out normal to the surface. And the further they stick out, the more curved your surface is. So what that really is a useful visual tool to tell you if there's breaks in your surface or deviations in the surface, but also kind of the flow of your surface. Not a very concrete way to define that or objective, but it's if you see the curvature cones going across your surface, you can kind of get an idea of the flow of your surface and the geometry of it, or dips in the surface and other weird aberrations that you kind of have to be on the lookout for. You're trying to usually make some smooth, highly manufacturable surface that goes into a tool for an injection mold, for instance. So, yeah, is that the short version or the long
Nice.
version? Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Do you do a lot of surface modeling?
I do, yeah. A lot of the stuff I do. A lot of consumer electronics have complex shapes. So you either have to build the surfaces yourself, or to get something from an industrial designer, you kind of need to know what to do with them. So that could be a lot of offsetting the surfaces, trying to thicken them, for instance, and then packaging things inside. So yeah, I do quite a bit of surfacing for the projects I'm on.
Yeah, surfacing is kind of its own beast, right? It's like this whole niche itself within CAD design. Um, do you primarily or exclusively use SolidWorks for your surfacing? I know there's some like plugins out there and just, different CAD systems altogether, like Rhino or things like that, where I've never used them, but I guess I understand that they're much more powerful for complex surfacing. But where do you typically live for surfacing? Is it all in SolidWorks?
It's all in SolidWorks right now. You can use other tools like Rhino, for instance, but the problem you're going to find is if you go and use something like a Rhino, there's a plugin called Grasshopper for Rhino, which gets around this, but you need a NURBS surface eventually, and that's where SolidWorks and CAD programs like Creo or NX, those are parametric programs. They have NURBS, they're non-uniform rational B-spline is what NURBS stands for. If you go into a Rhino or like a ZBrush or any of those programs, they're going to spit you out a mesh surface, which is not useful for manufacturing and making step files. You can 3D print it, you can turn it into an STL and 3D print it, but when the boots hit the ground, you need a NURB surface and you need those type of parametric files to be able to manufacture it. So to answer your question, I'm primarily in SolidWorks. I have used Onshape in the past and I've used NX before, but my own freelance setup, I'm using SolidWorks.
Nice. All right, I'm going to take a real short break here and share with everyone that the Being an Engineer podcast is brought to you by Pipeline Design and Engineering, where we don't design pipelines, but we do help companies develop advanced manufacturing processes, automated machines, and custom fixtures, complemented with product design and R&D services. You can learn more at teampipeline.us. The podcast is also sponsored by The Wave, an online platform of free tools, education, and community for engineers. Learn more at thewave.engineer. All right, so we're speaking with Ryan Stevenson today. Ryan, I imagine that there are engineers listening to this right now who are super interested in doing their own thing, trying the freelance lifestyle. What advice or pro tips can you share with them?
Stay connected to your former coworkers. I'm assuming if you made friends or have friends at former places, just stay in touch. Like we're so connected these days, but I find even myself being distant from former friends and things like that. And I was just reflecting on like, I don't know why. It's so easy just to send a text, stay in touch with your friends, stay in touch with your former coworkers, because 100% of the work I've gotten has been through former coworkers, connections of former coworkers, friends of friends, etc. That's the best advice I could say is stay in touch with people you know and the people you've worked with, because they're going to vet for you. They're going to vouch for you too, if you've done quality work. So that's your team right there, is people you've met, worked with in the past.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Um, how about working with inventors, individuals who don't necessarily understand the engineering process or the product development process? I mean, if you're working at a product company, whether it's, Apple or building locomotives, you're part of an engineering team. And you all kind of get it, right? Like you've been through the same things. You know the process. You know how it goes. But for sure, I found what back 16 years ago when I started Pipeline and it was just me and I was working with a lot of inventors. It's different working with people who have never gone through that engineering product development process before. Uh, any stories that you can share? Of course, we don't want to like, out any people or your customers or things like that, but any stories you can share where you had, I don't know, interesting educational experience working with someone who just had never been through that process before, and what did you do to help them walk through that process successfully?
Yeah, I think it's just a process of education, honestly. Trying to educate your clients on the risks involved with bringing a product to market. And I find that one of the biggest things that there's sort of a gap between my expectations and theirs is usually on something like schedule or timeline. How long is this actually
Mhm.
going to take to make a product?
Yeah.
Because they have, some sort of thing they've hacked up in their garage and they're like, yeah, I want to be pulling products off an injection mold tool in 3 months. And it's like, whoa, there's a lot of work to be done before we even get close to that. Think years, or something like that in your timeline here. So it's just a process of education. You're really just trying to educate, from a non-judgmental standpoint, your clients on the realities of this. And that's all you can do, really. I mean, if it's up to them to be able or to want to accept that reality or whatever. All I can do is just try my best to educate them and be open-minded about their concerns and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, we had an experience recently actually with an inventor who brought a product to us to develop, and we were going through just kind of conceptual design stages, and we'd kind of come towards the end of that concept design phase, and everything we'd heard from the customer was, "Yep, this is great. I love it. Everything looks good." In fact, we even had a call, like a web meeting with the inventor and some other people. And on that call, because I know that this can happen after working with inventors for a long time, I explicitly asked this individual, hey, does this design align with what you expected? Did you feel like this is going to fulfill the needs that your intentions for this project, this product? And the individual, our customer, said, yeah, yep, this is exactly what I hoped to see. This is right along the right lines. And so I said, okay, great. We moved on. A few days later, we get an email, and the email basically said, yeah, we're really concerned with the direction that you're going. We don't think you understand what the product needs to do, the requirements, and all this stuff. And I was like, oh man, I thought we were all on the same page. I like even explicitly asked that question, and I got the answer that I hoped to get, but and now customer is singing a different tune altogether. So I said, totally understand. Why don't we get together in person and talk through this? And so we did that, and customer came in. Could tell that like he wasn't super happy in the beginning. He was, a little disgruntled maybe. But we talked over it in person, and as we pointed things out that I think we just couldn't do like over a web call. He got it, and by the end he's like, okay, I understand. Yep, you guys are on the right track. Everything's good. Let's keep going. And even though I've been doing this for a long time, that was an educational experience for me, and I just realized, man, some people just uh, at no fault of their own, just because they don't have this background and experience, they haven't been through this process, they just they don't really see it in their minds, and being together in person and just like pointing things out in person, there's some kind of magic there that unlocks understanding for folks who just haven't been through that process before. So that's one of the things I've found that's super helpful when working with people who just don't have the engineering background.
Absolutely. Yeah. Communications one of the biggest challenges easily by far. And I find too, when you're doing things like design reviews just over the computer, if I have CAD pulled up and I have some certain section of my CAD that's kind of hacked together, not, I'm trying to show them this part of the CAD and be like, okay, this is the scope of what we're talking about, but there's this area over here I haven't quite finished yet. Um, I don't even mention this other area or anything like that. We're just talking about this. And then they're like, wait a second, what's going on over here and all this stuff. And it's just like, you just have to be so careful with like the things
Yeah.
you're trying to communicate. And it's like, oh, like,
Yep.
yeah, I know I see your concern, but it's like, it's not even close to being done yet. So just, we'll get there. Just, yeah, things like that. So
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. And they'll fixate on that, well, but why does it look like that? It's not ready yet. But why does it look like it does?
yeah,
It's not ready yet. Yeah. Yeah. I know exactly what you're saying. Um, I want to go back to your year-ish hiatus and just taking some time as a break. What did you hope to learn or experience during that time? Or did you not have much of a plan? You're just like, man, I've been working really hard for a while. It's time for a break and just chill out a bit and see what happens.
yeah, I think it was a bit of both, honestly. When I left Apple, and I had mentioned this on the last day to my friends I worked with that, I was hoping to have the mental capacity to kind of see where life takes me of sorts. Like, where's my mind taking me? What am I interested in? Not that I wasn't interested in my work, but when you work in such an intense environment for so long, and 40 hours a week plus for any job, it's a lot. A lot of your mental capacity is taken up, and then you go home if you have kids, you got that whole thing taking up your mental capacity. It's just not a lot of space to kind of explore where your mind wants to go. And I was kind of really looking forward to that, taking that time off. Um, and that's what I did. I mean, I spent a lot of time with my daughter. I did things that are things that allowed me to think like that, and that involves like mountain sports, usually like mountain biking or kayaking and things like that. So it just allowed me that capacity to kind of let my mind see where it takes me, and that led me down reading a bunch of different books, subjects I was just interested in, but never had the time to read about, or even things like trading, which I had kind of dabbled in for the last several years, just on the side. But it allowed me to explore that sort of business, if you will, even though it didn't end up being fruitful. That's okay. I am grateful for the experience to be able to take that time to explore it. So yeah, it just gave me time to think about things I normally wouldn't have.
Yeah. Did you have any key insights during that time? Anything that helped guide the next phase of your career?
It's a really good question. I think I didn't have to come back to doing engineering work. In fact, I actively thought about not coming back to doing engineering work, and just exploring different fields. But I think I really focused on the things that I like to do and the things that I'm good at. There's this concept called ikigai. I don't know if you're familiar with it, like the Japanese
Mm-mm.
idea of, and I'm going to butcher this a little bit, but it's this idea that like you're doing something that's meaningful to you, good for the planet in whatever sense that means, and you're good at it. And there's some other aspect of it I can't remember, but I just kind of focused on that and thought about what am I good at? What do I like doing? And it's not like I didn't like hardware. I think it's fun. Um, it also provides a living for me. So that's also important. Doing things that
Yeah.
provide a living, right? I can't, that's an important fact. That's life these days, right? So I don't have a trust fund or anything like that. I got to pay the bills. So I just kind of came back to this idea of coming back to engineering. Um, it kind of just drew me back in. I think it's one of those things where my friend, I told you the story of how I kind of got into freelancing. I didn't actively seek it. It just kind of grabbed me back in of sorts. And I just kind of accepted that and went back into it with sort of an open mind. But I think life is kind of weird in that way. It's unexpected and just kind of not. I'm not trying to be woo woo here, but like life, life just takes you certain ways, and you just sort of follow that path, and it just happens. And I'm really content with being back where I am now, doing engineering work.
Amen, brother. There's a quote from Steve Jobs that I have hanging on my wall in my home office, and I'm not going to get it exactly right, but it's something to the effect of you just have to trust that the dots in your life are going to line up at some point when you look back. And not everything might make sense in the moment, but at some point, looking backwards, you just have to trust that things are going to line up and work out and make sense. And I have found that to be true in my own life. There's another great quote by, it was one of the Beatles. I can't remember which one now, but he said, in the end, it'll be okay. And if it's not okay, it's not the end. I always found that to be comforting.
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think a lot of things in my life just have been lucky circumstances, and just I've always been willing to just see where those things take me, whether risky or not, and it just led me back here, and I'm grateful for that. And we'll see where it takes me next. So you never know.
Yeah, for sure. Thinking back over all the different projects you've done, whether it's been during your time as a freelancer or at Apple or building locomotives or SGW, whatever it was, are there any that stand out that were particularly important for you? And I'll let you decide what important means, whether you learned a valuable lesson, maybe it was a colossal failure that you learned something great from, or maybe it was just like an extraordinarily fun and rewarding project or product that you worked on. But anything stand out in particular to you?
I think I can think of a couple examples, but the one that stands out to me as far as meaningful to me has to be kind of the startup with the ski pole. That company is still called Realtime Adventure Data. It really just was starting from nothing, just an idea in Micah's head of the ski pole with sensors in it to help backcountry skiers navigate treacherous water, so to speak. And the first prototype was literally just a PVC pipe with like a force sensor in it and just, Pelican case. And just really going through several years, several iterations of that product over and over again. We had won some money at pitch. It was like was it a pitch contest? It's some sort of competition where you talk about your business idea, whatever those are called these days. But it's just like we were just bootstrapping it, just everything ourselves. There's no outside help. We're just really trying to push this product hard. I have just a nostalgic sense of pride about developing that product in particular, maybe more so than any other. Because when you go to work for companies, you're usually, if you're not working on an exactly new product, you're kind of put into the middle of a culture or some sort of product pipeline or some sort of set in place manufacturing process that your next product that you design for that company is probably going to follow that to some degree. There's like standards set in place. With that, it was literally nothing. We didn't know what we were doing. I mean, we were just trying to figure it out. And made so many mistakes, and that's just how you learn. I think it's just try something, fail, and do it again. It's sort of cliche these days. Everybody says it, but like it really is just how life is and how it works. So yeah,
Absolutely.
that's easily the product I think of with the most nostalgia, if you will.
Yeah, that's terrific. It reminds me of some of my early projects when I started Pipeline. I worked for a company for 3.5 years, something like that, right out of college, doing product development, mostly for medical devices, but for some other things as well. So I had, a foundation, but I wasn't very far into my career, 3.5 years, and I got laid off there. And this is when I had kind of my uh, exploration into different things, and do I even want to do engineering anymore? And I explored, you know, photography and web design. Anyway, um, uh, ultimately I came back or continued doing engineering, and I remember having pretty severe imposter syndrome. Like, who am I to be telling these people how to design their product with only 3.5 years of real world experience? I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I know a little bit what I'm doing, but I'm not a professional. I'm not an expert here. Even though in some areas I was actually pretty good looking back on it. But I had a conversation with an older gentleman who he wasn't an engineer at all. He was kind of I don't know, marketing business type guy. And I was asking him, how did you start out? Because he'd been doing his own thing for a long time. And he said, fake it till you make it. You just fake it till you make it. And I thought, wow, this guy, like, he's really successful now. And that's his advice. Fake it till you make it. So I thought, okay, I'll just keep going and trust that things will work out. And you know what? They did. I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes, but you live and you learn, and eventually you get to a point where you actually do know what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we're all human. I mean, it's just we're gonna make mistakes, and that's okay. I think I've gotten more okay with that as the years have gone on. But I think I still suffer from like some degree of um, imposter syndrome to a degree. Even when you asked me to come on this podcast, I was like, wait, you want to me? You want to interview me? That's you just interviewed Sam, Holland, who I work with quite a bit, and it's just like Sam, built something really successful, like informal. It's really cool, and I'm just like freelancer. So it still never goes away for a lot of people, and that's okay. But the process is still the same. Just keep trying and failing, and do it again. Figure it out.
Yeah. There's a professor at, I think it's Harvard, maybe Stanford. I think it's Harvard. And he's done research into imposter syndrome. And I just watched this video on YouTube. It was like a 4 or 5 minute video. I posted something on LinkedIn a few months ago, and I basically talked about that. I was like, I still to this day feel imposter syndrome in certain contexts. And someone sent me this video, and I watched it. I was like, oh, that's really cool. Anyway, this guy talks about all the research that he's done into imposter syndrome. And long story short, what he's learned over however long he's been researching this topic is that the people who don't have imposter syndrome and are extraordinarily confident in their abilities, generally speaking, are actually not that competent. They're not anywhere near as good as they think they are.
Yeah.
And the people who struggle with imposter syndrome are typically pretty driven, successful, capable people. So it was a really interesting experience watching that video. And I mean, this guy has pretty good, what's the word I'm looking for here? Social proof, I guess. Just the fact that he's a professor at Harvard. He's been studying this topic for a long time, and this is like his concrete, legitimate, apparently data that he's learned. So anyway, I thought that was pretty neat. That if you have imposter syndrome, it's actually probably a good sign for you.
Totally. Yeah. Shows a driven individual of sorts.
Yeah, right. Um, if you were to, rewind the clock 10 years back to when Ryan was just starting out in his career, what advice would you give 10 years ago, Ryan, that you know now that you wish you knew back then?
Man, that's a really good question. I think I sometimes cringe at my younger self as far as I'm not like an outwardly arrogant person, but I feel like I just had a sense of arrogance about me for no
Hmm.
particular reason. Not outwardly to other people, but maybe it's just how I grew up or something like that. But just stay humble, just stay humble. That's probably the best advice I would give, and just keep following your instincts. I feel like a lot of my success is not because of things I've actively done per se. Like I've been in the right situation at the right time, and I think that's par- partially what I have allowed myself to be. Like you put yourself in favorable situations because of your work, etc. I mean, that's the old what the adage about luck or something, right? But I would say keep taking risks, like follow your instinct, and that's always worked for me, for better or worse. And I feel fortunate for where I've been led. Um, so I don't know if that quite answers your question as far as like what advice would I give, but stay humble and keep doing what you're doing, and don't get discouraged. It's just so easy to get discouraged these days. I think especially with the internet being what it is these days, it's really easy to just get like the comparison, going back to sort of imposter syndrome, the comparison is the thief of joy adage is very true. I think it's more true than ever. But yeah, just keep going.
I love that advice. Stay humble. I mean, that right there is just foundational life lesson type advice right there. Stay humble. Um, Shucks, I had something I was going to bring up, and now I can't remember what it was. Well, it'll come back to me. In the meantime, I've got one more question for you, and then we'll wrap things up here. What is one thing that you've done to accelerate the speed of engineering?
Yeah, that's a really good one. We kind of been talking about fail early and often. I think that applies to prototyping for sure. Just sketch things, 3D print things, whatever is the fastest way you can de-risk a product or figure out something you're trying to find out about a product. Do it. It doesn't have to be the whole product. No, everything has to be sexy or catted up or anything like that. Just figure out what you're trying to figure out, prototype it, and use those results for the next iteration. I think specifically with speed, One thing I've been using a lot lately is ChatGPT, essentially, LLMs. They're just like a super Google for all kinds of random stuff that I have questions about, even things like draft on a surface for injection molding with this particular resin that I'm looking to use. Like, what are the recommendations? And of course, you have to like double check this, of course, but I used it the other day to figure out kind of down select on some VHB tapes I was interested in. It's just an incredible tool that even a couple of years ago wasn't around. It's like a super Google. It's so helpful for finding answers to the most esoteric questions you could possibly think of in engineering, because a lot of these things are just hard. Like they're not easy to find. Like if I wanted to,
Yeah.
I could go to 3M's catalog, which is like 10,000 pages, and try to find a VHB tape, or I can just go to ChatGPT and it can help me down select really quickly, like at least like a subset of the specific tapes I'm looking for. This could apply to things like pogo pins, even for PCBs, etc. I mean, the ability to get that information so quickly is pretty incredible and fairly new in the grand scheme of uh, information transfer, if you will.
It's amazing. Yeah, I use it daily, heavily daily. My days are mostly spent not so much on engineering anymore. Mostly what I work on now is like marketing and business development and sales and things like that. And just the other day, I was experimenting with the new-ish agent mode in ChatGPT, where it'll go off and like actually do things for you. And I had it. I was looking for additional leads here in Arizona that might be a good fit for my company, Pipeline. And so I just had a ChatGPT agent go off. I said, go off and find like 100 companies here locally that I don't know of. And I gave it a list of companies that we already know and work with here locally. And it went off and it built this spreadsheet of, yeah, sure enough, 100 companies that I didn't even know were here in the Phoenix Valley. And it gave me the website for them and a short description of what they do and why ChatGPT thought it would be a good fit for my company. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably would have paid someone like thousands of dollars to do that in the past, and now ChatGPT does it for free for 30 minutes.
Yeah, it's incredible. You can do just basically anything with it. I mean, you can put in data to it. It'll help like organize and spit it out, find correlations, whatever. I mean,
Yeah,
speaking of like
yeah.
sales things, like I even uploaded my LinkedIn, so like basically polish this, whatever the wording I used, and just comes back with all these recommendations and things. And I think people are starting to catch on if you like use too much of the Chat GPT language, if you will, and like your posts on LinkedIn or whatever, people kind of catch on. But I use it as just like a reference, and it's just like a really handy reference, just to even like continue the like workflow, if you will, of like trying to write out copy or whatever it may be. It's just such a useful tool for pretty much anything.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yep. I, Going along what you were saying about people catching on to if you're using ChatGPT too much, there's some telltale signs that I feel like we I don't know, there's almost an aversion to it. I don't know why exactly. Maybe because I don't know, it just doesn't seem fair that you're not doing the work. You're outsourcing it to some AI chatbot and then just pasting it in. I don't know exactly what the reason is. That gets into some kind of psychology, I guess, there. But I think there is a little bit of an aversion to like if it's really clear that you're just using ChatGPT to do the work. A couple of telltale signs that whenever I'm using something from ChatGPT, I always remove because it always does this. Now that I'm saying that, I realize I could probably just tell it don't do these things when I'm asking it for something. But bolding words, like it always does that, and I think it looks kind of weird. And then using too many or any like little emojis in
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah.
I always take all those things out because to me that's just like, oh yeah, obviously this was done in AI, and who knows if Aaron even thought about this before just throwing it in there. So, a couple
Yeah.
of tips to
When
take out.
I use it to think of like posts, for instance, for the hardware meetup, because I'm not like a copywriter. But
Yeah.
it always spits out like 100 rocket emojis and things like that for, uh, there's like the robot emoji, the lightning bolt, the gear, the rocket, and
Yeah.
it's always spitting those
Yep.
out whenever it tries to come up with a post. And that's an interesting point about human aversion to, I guess, the AI programs doing what they do. That's interesting. I've never really reflected on that before, but you're definitely right. Like I find it myself doing it too for no particular reason. Maybe there's something deep in our neocortex or something like that that says like, wait a minute, a human did not make this. That is somehow
I'm being manipulated.
Yeah, sort
something.
of. Yeah, it's
Something.
against the laws of nature or something.
Right.
We are supposed to be
Right.
connecting as humans, not having some computer write for us or something. I don't know. But yeah, I'll have to reflect on
Yeah.
that more. That's pretty interesting that you bring it up.
All right, Ryan. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Obviously, you're a very bright guy, lots of great experience, and I hope you have just all the success in the world with continuing your freelance endeavors. Anything else that you want to touch on before we wrap things up here?
Gosh, anything I want to touch on? I can't think of anything that comes to mind. No, I'm really grateful for you reaching out and allowing me to be on the podcast. So thank you, Aaron. I'll be going down to PDX next week. The shameless plug for Aaron here and all you do. So thanks for doing that. He did not ask me to say that. So I'm excited to get down and meet you in person. Also, I'm a big fan of continuing education. So I'm excited to get down there and learn some new stuff.
Fantastic.
Provide more value.
Yeah, thank you. Awesome. How can people get in touch with you?
Easiest way is LinkedIn. You'll see the icon of me with my long flowing hair. That's probably the easiest way. You can reach out via my email. It's kind of a mouthful. It's calculatinginfinityllc@gmail.com. Funny story. I had originally made that. That's my LLC name here in Idaho. I originally made that because I was doing trading and I had this whole idea about like trying to make a bunch of money with that. And it just kind of popped in my head. But anyway, if you wish to reach out to me via email. That's my email. But yeah, LinkedIn's the easiest.
Awesome. All right. Ryan, thanks again. I really appreciate you sharing your background, insight, and all your wisdom with us.
Yeah, thank you very much, Aaron. Thanks for having me on.
I'm Aaron Moncur, founder of Pipeline Design and Engineering. If you liked what you heard today, please share the episode. To learn how your team can leverage our team's expertise developing advanced manufacturing processes, automated machines, and custom fixtures, complemented with product design and R&D services, visit us at teampipeline.us. To join a vibrant community of engineers online, visit thewave.engineer. Thank you for listening.